your martial arts movie podcast.
I threw that shit before I walked in the room.
Featuring drunken Thai boxer Will.
Too bad you will die.
The also drunken wrestler Mark.
I said I don't want trouble.
And drunken karate master Zero.
You've lost your balls.
And now,
Call. I know Kung Fu. You know, baby.
Fists of Fail.
Every episode.
No. Like some episodes is easier because I have something to think about before
Something
start.
clever to
maybe
elaborate
this is our
on.
intro. Maybe this is our actual intro into
Sure,
the episode
why not?
for how we're gonna end Once Upon a Time in China, the series, or at least the ones featuring Jet Li and Rosamund Kwan. We're skipping over 4 and 5. We're gonna just talk about the final entry of the series featuring Jet Li.
Have you seen 4 and 5?
Oh, I've seen the whole thing, but it's,
Yeah.
I think I told this in the previous episode. I only remember 1 and 2, as does everyone else. Those are the 2 entries in the series that everyone remembers very fondly. But this is the one that I actually remember probably more than everything else. I don't remember a single thing with the Vincent Zhao entries with 4 and 5. So if you ask me any questions about it, be like, yeah, Jet Li looks different in those movies.
It's interesting because I've been the one who has kept on elaborating on the relationship of Jet Li and Rosamund Kwan's characters, Wong Fei Hung and Anne 13, in the series throughout the first 3 movies. I have not seen 4 and 5, and upon watching this movie, Once Upon a Time in America, for the first time, it feels like nothing has happened in between 3 and this one. So I don't know what happened in parts 4 and 5 between the characters, if anything changed, but this feels like it's the next step from where it was supposed to be, although for me personally, I wanted them to just be a real loving couple at this point. Jet Li's character is still a little hesitant.
You think so? I think there's a very drastic evolution in their relationship. I mean, the way that the last movie ended, the third
Part
installment,
3, yes.
Part 3, which we discussed. Yeah, he was definitely a lot more reserved. I felt like he didn't really evolve too much. Obviously he did, and to some extent, because she was making the advances on him, and he eventually opened up a little bit. But this movie, I feel like he's a lot more brash, not brash, but he's a lot more open about it. He even proposes to her very early on in the film. So I felt like their relationship definitely blossomed a lot.
And then the movie's like, nope, you're getting amnesia. And I was like, no, why?
It pulls
Why?
the old trick, the old movie trope that once... The first half of the movie is Wong Fei Hung not remembering who he is. And yeah, we played that old tired trope. And not only that, but this is the first movie where it takes place in America. Oh, man, the title of this... For you guys who don't know what I have to do whenever I type in the file names for all these episodes, and I'm typing... the episode is called Extremo. Type it in. I'm so tired of typing in Once Upon a Time in China. It takes fucking forever to type that in. I copy and paste it over and over. And then this title does not roll off the tongue at all.
Not at all.
Not even a little bit. And it takes place, it's Once Upon a Time in China and America. It doesn't take place in China at all.
It's Chinese characters in America, and I believe they actually shot in Texas, so that's pretty cool. It's not China masquerading as the Americas, as the Wild West. So that's kind of interesting that we got a Hong Kong crew overseas to film a movie.
Yeah. What is this rumor that you've heard about Sammo and Jackie? And this is not founded. This is apparently allegation. But
Yeah,
you did mention to me soft
I've
camera
heard
before.
right. I've heard in some podcasts where people said that Jackie had a falling out with Sammo because Jackie had kind of like a mood board back in the day of all his ideas he wanted to do, and one of them was a martial arts western film. And Sammo Hung went and did this in 1997 before Jackie could do Shanghai Noon. And apparently a falling out came because of that. And that's kind of the extent of what I know. I don't know the source of that information because the people never cited it. So, I mean, I wouldn't think they would spout misinformation, but I would like to know where that was heard. So
Right. Well, the internet's never the wrong source for misinformation, so I totally believe that. Well, actually, that kind of makes sense, right? Because Sammo and Jackie haven't really collaborated on anything in quite some time. But whatever. Let's get back to this movie. Speaking of Sammo, Cherry Hawk has taken a step down from a directing role to strictly being producer, and Yuen Ping is no longer part of these productions, and Sammo has taken on the reins of both. And it kind of shows in the final product, right? It definitely feels more like a Sammo movie, right?
I'm not good with identifying Sammo's feel yet. We have covered a bunch of his movies,
Yeah.
but those movies were action directed by Jackie Chan, as to where Sammo himself was just directing. This is Sammo doing direction and action, so I am not still familiar with his style. It seems like he's trying to keep it in that same vein where there is some grounded fights, and then there is assistance from Wireworks, and then there's wacky physics going on with the environment and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be a Once Upon a Time in China movie without a little bit of wire work and a lot of like flying acrobatics and such, right? I'm not sure if Sammo is the go-to guy for some stuff like that.
I was going to say, now that I've seen Sammo's action direction and how he's put this movie together versus how Yuen Ping would do the wire work, I can clearly have an appreciation for Yuen Ping's wire work, because it just looks a lot more well composed and put together.
Yeah.
Here it's a little messy.
Right.
There's a lot of editing going on in here. I was actually really surprised to see that.
Yeah.
During the action, I was getting a little disappointed because there's a lot of choreography going on, but we never get long bouts where you get to breathe and take in the two fighters just sparring with each other. It's like a few hits, cut, a few hits, cut. It's very, very rapid paced. It feels energetic, but it's just not to my liking.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I can't put my finger on that just feels like something's just out of place. I think it's a combination of little things, right? But one thing that we kind of alluded to is that Sammo is trying to do the wire fu, do the more wuxia style fighting, and it feels like an imitation, right? That's I don't want to say that in a negative way. I mean, because of the series, all 5 installments before this one had set up like how the style of action that it's known for, Yuen Ping style. Yuen Ping's a master at wire fu. Whether you love it or you hate it, I mean, this series definitely like leans into that. Sammo comes in and he's like, all right, well, he's not part of this production. I'll just do my interpretation of it. It just feels like a pale imitation of it. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But then Sammo's also trying to weave in his own style. Sammo's action direction is super aggressive, and you can definitely see that in this movie.
That's a good way of putting it. It feels very in your face. There's a lot of aggression towards a lot of the hits, and then a lot of the weapon stuff is just like, we need to kill you. This is going through whatever you're trying to block me with.
Yeah. Yep. But enough about all that stupid action stuff. Let's talk about what we're all here for. The story. Once Upon a Time in China and America. I fucking hate that name. So long. It takes place in America. It starts off right off the bat with the main characters almost running over what's his name? Jeff Wolf. The character's name is Billy. In the middle of the desert, and they take him on and basically to befriend him. And it seems like a really weird opening, but the point of this is that they befriend a local, I guess, right? And the rest of the movie is just the characters trying to support a branch of the Pochilam Chinese apothecary in taking place in America. And obviously there's racism involved because, like they don't want them involved, the Chinese there. And there's like framing involved, but there's also like extra characters involving like Native Americans, cowboys, the mayor, all this extra shit. I feel like I'm on a surface level, it sounds like I'm just like glossing over a lot of things, but I feel like I'm actually describing it pretty succinctly. There's basically what it is.
That is one of the main plot points, as you said. They're trying to
and Jet Li
take care
loses
of
his memory.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. The big one that happens in the very beginning is our three main characters, An 13, Wong Fei Hung, and 7, a character who was in part 3 has now he got an upgrade, continuing being portrayed by Jet Li's stunt double, Shin Chong. They are hilariously thrown into the river after their stage car crashes into them, causing, Shin Chong and Rosamund Kwan to kind of, coincidentally meet up with the people they're trying to meet in the town. And Jet Li wakes up in a Native American village.
Yep.
And you can kind of see where, maybe you might start be making comparisons to Shanghai Noon. You can see some parallels here and there, but it's not the same story at all.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Like not even a little bit. But I mean, besides the fact that they take place in the West, although I did feel there were slight nods to each other's movie, especially in the hut scene. I was like, oh, this really feels like Shanghai Noon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But then after that whole thing, it just it's just two Western films at that point.
Right. Yeah, that's fine. I think at least both the movies are distinct from one another. But yeah, like story wise, it's actually fairly straightforward.
That's
Jet
one
Li
of the
loses
nice
his
things
memory.
about this movie, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you compare it to the previous films, obviously, they were very cultural, right? There's a lot of parts of those movies that are very much part of just Chinese culture. If you're Chinese, it actually benefits you a little bit to, because it just kind of goes past like a Westerner's like understanding of certain things, whereas this movie's a little bit more user friendly. I feel like someone can just jump right into this in this film. But yeah, I'd say this movie's just okay. It's definitely a step up from the third installment. I think the third installment is pretty bad. Pretty bad. I wouldn't say it's horrible, but it's not to my liking. But this movie is just middle of the road. I don't know if I'd say it's the best way to end the series, but for a franchise that went one movie a year,
and then they went into a TV series, I think, as well, right?
Yeah, I think that happened concurrently with this movie. With Vincent Zhao. Zhao. I mean, they wanted Jet Li back. That was like a main draw for the audiences at the time because Jet Li obviously had a falling out after the third installment. Rosamund Kwan also stepped down from her role.
So she's not in part 4 and 5 either?
I don't think so. I think she was enticed by this movie because, or like coming back to this production because Jet Li was coming back.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool to know. Yeah.
But Vincent Zhao took on 4 and 5, and then he went on to do a TV series while Jet Li just was like, all right, I'm back. So we kind of had like a Conan Jay Leno kind of thing going on. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But yeah, I mean, it is a big draw. Jet Li's finally back in the role, and he does an okay job. But I don't think it has anything to do with him. It's just the movie's just okay all in all. I think the script itself is so straightforward and so by the numbers.
Yeah, it's not trying to outdo itself. Like the third one, like each movie feels like it's trying to step up in a way where the third one tries to do it. And for us, if you listen to the episode, you can hear that for us it just failed. At least with this movie, they kept the story very, very simple. The characters are still the same. There's a little bit of evolution with them going on. So, you know, like there's not too much to hate on it. It's not like there's glaring plot holes. It's not like the action is horrible. It's just there. But I think what might upset some people is because they got Jet Li and Rosamund Kwan back, and because this is technically the last film, you kind of want it to go out with a bang, right? And it's just right down the center, middle of the road. So I can see where some people might have been disappointed.
Yeah. I don't really know enough of the box office returns. Unfortunately, we don't have any commentary to kind of back up this movie. We just kind of have to go with what just the movie itself. But I want to say that from what I've heard from Mike Reed and his commentary on the previous versions of the film, like the series wasn't doing all too great. Especially by the time the third installment came out and Jet Li exited the production, Vincent Zhao came on, and the films just were I think they were concurrently being parodied. Jet Li was actually in a movie where he was starring as like a parody of Wong Fei-hung. So that's like at that time I think interest was starting to wane, and then when he came back onto production for this movie, it's like, all right, I guess they just assumed that the series is kind of lost its luster. Like they probably had the idea that this is going to be the last movie, and I think it's okay. I think it's not the strongest ending. But I wouldn't say that the series ended on a whimper.
No,
but
it feels like a sequel in between, you know, a whole series. Like this could have been part 4, and we could have got more movies after this, because to reiterate what you said, it doesn't feel like an ending. It just kind of ends. Almost there's almost implication that the story can continue, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. But it doesn't.
It doesn't. Nope.
It doesn't. It just kind of ends
on
the way that it does, which is fine. Like after watching, it's like okay. And I think I might have had some like Wong Fei-hung fatigue after this whole month. I'm like, wow, it's we've done a lot of Once Upon a Time in China movies, and they're of varying quality. Let's put it as that. And I maybe I should say this now because I know my sense of memory is not always the greatest. And I should say it now before I forget. One thing that I notice is what distinguishes a good Once Upon a Time in China movie and a not so great one is the villain. And this one does not have a good villain.
Well, that's something I wanted to reiterate on. So the movie is very straightforward in terms of the plotting. It seems that in the beginning they do set up who the villains are. Mainly the mayor and then some of the local bar attendees who are racist and misogynistic.
Yep.
And throughout the whole movie, I thought, okay, they're the bad guys. They're going to be the ones who we have to fight at the end.
Yep.
But then somewhere down the middle, they introduce this character, this bank robbing character who is just kind of a crazy guy, you know, cutting his own chest, you know, drop kicks a wolf and cuts the wolf with his spinning spur on the heels of his boots. Very, very silly.
Yeah.
And once he takes over, it's unfortunate because, you know, there's no comeuppance for those other racist characters. They just kind of go by the wayside with their deaths, and we don't even know who this final bad guy is. We just know, oh, he's you know, main bank robber.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely that. I don't feel like the characters... we don't get enough of his presence throughout the film either, right? And we don't feel like... Yeah, he's kind of menacing. He doesn't get enough presence. He doesn't get enough screen time. Like, he gets some screen time to know that he's there, but you don't really feel the weight of his... whatever. Like, you can't compare it to like the villains of the first two movies. Like you feel like there's some you can feel the direness and you can feel the skill level of the power level of both of those characters, and that's actually a shame. And I think that's also part of the Western setting. The problem with the Western setting in this movie is that you can't expect cowboys to know martial arts, right?
Yes, that was something I was also going to comment on.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's a Western, they needed to make the final bad guy a cowboy or an outlaw. And maybe compared to what Sammo was looking for, he might not have been up to snuff with handling Hong Kong style of action, how demanding it is and whatnot.
Yeah,
so,
maybe.
Yeah, hard to tell what happened.
I don't know. I kind of wanted. This might be a spoiler. I don't know because we'll eventually have to talk about it. It's pretty trivial, but Roger Yuan's in this movie too.
I was gonna say that's also a Shanghai Noon connection.
That is a Shanghai Noon connection. It's like, oh, what do you know? I actually thought that he maybe would play a more pivotal role. Nope. Not even a little bit. It's not even worth talking about it when we get to that part of the movie.
He's there and he's gone.
Yeah, it's such a shame. I'm like, oh, I kind of wanted there to be. I mean, it's not really a secret. He plays a villainous character, but not like a main bad guy. But I thought he would be a main bad guy. At least be a foible for some of the characters to fight some ways down the line. But nope. Instead, he does fight that bank robber, the leader of the gang that you just mentioned, played by Joseph Saya. I believe that's him.
I'm pretty positive he doesn't have any fights. Did I miss one?
The main bad guy, the robber at the
No, Roger Yuan. You said he fights the bank robber.
Oh no! I'm sorry. I think you might have. Maybe I misspoke.
Okay.
Roger Yuan does not have any fights. All I'm saying is
Yes,
the bank robber leader does have one. He is
Yes,
the main.
yes.
Obviously,
he is the main final fight.
Yeah,
Probably the best one in the end, though.
I don't know about that, but yeah, he is the final fight. The way that we set up the movie, and it's like, why does he fight? He's like, he's a cowboy. Like he shouldn't know martial arts, and the way that he fights, it almost seems like he kind of does. Yeah. But at the same time, okay, so like I don't want to dive into the action itself yet. I meant to say that in order to set up a true test of worth for the main character, he needs to fight a worthy adversary at the end, and I feel like that's not what we get at the end. This guy doesn't really pose much of a threat to Wong Fei-hung at all. And that's actually a problem I didn't bring up at all in the third movie, was that he didn't really have a test of, like, he doesn't have a worthy opponent at the end in any part of that movie.
What are you talking about? He had to fight 1 billion lion dancers.
I don't count that. I don't count lions. It's first lions and cowboys. Compared to the first two movies, we had some pretty memorable villains in those movies, and then I guess this movie and the third installment didn't really have that, so I think that was an
Do you think that they were going for some sort of like weird caricature with the final cowboy boss? He had that like kind of handlebar mustache, I don't know. He looked really odd. Like I don't know if they were trying to go for like trying to make his race seem ambiguous or something like that, because it looked like, I don't know, he just looked a little different. Something was odd about his appearance.
All I can say is that his introduction in the movie is he is peeing. It's like,
I thought he was taking a shit.
He was taking a shit. Yeah, you're right. He was taking a shit, and like that doesn't make me like feel like this character is of any is intimidating whatsoever.
Well, see, they're trying to throw you off because he's a human, all human shit, and then he goes and he drop kicks a wolf. And now he's really, he's bad news.
Yeah, and that's a certain point. Okay, yeah, sure, yeah, I can buy. He's licking his own blood. He's cutting himself up a little bit. It's like, okay, I can kind of believe the menace. And then he talks. I'm like, oh, his voice is super. It doesn't sound menacing at all. There's like a disconnect with this character, like all in all. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of little things about the movie that kind of bother me. But I'd say that some of the parts, it's not so bad. It's not a perfect movie. I'd say that it's just middle of the road. It's again better than the last movie that we just talked about, but yeah, as a martial arts enthusiast, I'm like, I don't know. Some of the actions, I think you kind of like already touched upon it. Some of it's just messy, I guess, or not memorable. I don't know. There's quite a couple fights in this movie, and I think only one of them really stands out for me, and we can definitely talk about that too.
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of things. Just like you said, sometimes it feels messy. And then a lot of times you forget what you just saw because for me personally, there was a lot of rapid editing going on and I couldn't really absorb any sort of choreography or combinations that they were trying to show off because it was more about the ferocity of it. It was more about the aggression that was going on.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go into the action breakdown now, or are we going to keep
Why not?
generalize? Okay, so
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. We're at the point where we give our recommendations, but there's a whole wealth of audio you would be listening to here if you follow us on Patreon. There you can listen to the entire episode, including an exclusive action breakdown of the fights in the movie. And now on to our final thoughts. And then they leave America. That's it.
that's it. That's Once Upon a Time in China and America.
Yeah, that's a weird way to end it. But yeah, that's actually kind of how the movie kind of wraps up. And that's the end of the series. That's so weird to cap it off like that.
I feel like maybe they thought they might have got another movie, so they didn't want to make the ending definitive. Like, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe we'll see you next year. Maybe we'll be back in China. Who knows?
Well, stylistically, this movie feels like a huge departure from the last couple movies we talked about, right? Not that it's taking place in America, but also it just kind of feels like a completely different series. Do you think? Do you agree?
I would say only because the visuals for me, because they're literally in America. And then maybe the story, because this is the most coherent story.
Yeah.
It's like the easiest one to follow, and all the other movies have been, maybe not the second one, but the first and the third one have been like, oh man, what are you guys doing here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. There's something about this movie that kind of stands out. So if they were to have made another movie after this, it would have to go back to basics maybe, or they'd go to space. I don't know. Something.
Well, let's see. So they introduced him losing his memory. Maybe he time travels and has to
maybe
do something.
Wait. Maybe that's what happens in Kung Fu Legends. You know, like after this movie, he travels forward and he joins the Kung Fu Avengers. Kind of like a terrible movie that I don't know if we're ever going to talk about.
We should do it.
Now, one day we'll talk about it. But just to wrap up, Once Upon a Time in China and America, which I swear they should have just called this movie Once Upon a Time in Chinatown. That would have been a much more fitting movie, especially with the way that movie ends.
Ooh, they should have called this movie Journey to the East.
Okay, maybe. But then it wouldn't have the Once Upon a
that's true.
prefix.
That's true.
Whatever. The series is over. It's kind of a shame, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad it ended this way. It wouldn't say it ended on a whimper, but it's not the strongest ending. But I think it's satisfactory. How about that?
Yes.
All right. But story-wise, I think it's satisfactory. How I can leave it as that. I think that it's a good conclusion for these characters because it does just feel like another. You can either see it as the way that this Cherry Hawk series for the character could just be considered just like an ending for them, or you can consider it as like another day in the life of these characters. Just imagine in your head like another installment.
Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, it's nice to see these characters again.
Yeah. All right, but that's story-wise, I think it's fine. We glossed over it, but I think that you can still enjoy it just watching it through and through. Action-wise, it's kind of a step down, but it's better than the third movie in a different way, right?
Yeah, it's not as ambitious with the action as the third movie, but then sometimes it feels a little lower because it plays it safe.
That's a
Right?
good point. That's a good point.
But it's not bad though. It's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of opinions on the third movie. They tried. They tried. It's a mess. That movie. This movie's not a mess, but there's nothing about the action that really stands out for me. Like there's quite a couple fights, and all of them are just kind of middle of the road, or they don't have anything that really distinguishes itself all too much. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's like giving Sammo the reins of like trying to adhere to the style of someone else's action direction, and I think that's kind of bizarre. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't feel like Sammo has done a lot of wire fu. Like that's not his specialty. His specialty is like making aggressive action choreography grounded more in reality. And here it's like he's trying to blend his own style with someone else's style. So I think that's like the core of the problem. I like the fight between Shin Shaw and Jet Li, but I think that's probably because it's more story driven than the actual choreography itself. And then outside of that, I actually don't have much else to say. Like none of the action actually just really sticks out. I don't recommend any of the action out without context. Just go watch the movie.
Let's watch the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. Just what else is there to add to that?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Yeah, I think you can, if you're gonna watch the series like we have, you can do it like this. 1, 2, 3, and then Once Upon a Time in America, because all the characters are back together again, so it feels nice. You don't get exactly that feeling of closure, but knowing it's the last one, you can tell yourself, okay, it's cool that Jet Li returns, Rosamund Kwan returns, and this is them riding off into the sunset, right?
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Is that some sort of joke about the West? Because it just feels like you're trying to make a joke about the West.
Of course. Oh, hey, okay. Can I guess your ranking for the movies we watched?
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so part 2, part 1, this one, and then 3.
I feel like that's the obvious one. I feel like that would probably be yours, right?
Yeah, that's mine.
Mine, I don't know. No, okay, you know what? Like maybe this is the best time to bring up a conversation like this because we are wrapping up the month, right? Maybe I don't know. It might be a tie between the first and the second for me. Not the third. Oh my god, I almost said the third.
Well, yeah, third. I think universally is at the bottom. This one is probably above that, and then for you, it's a swap between the first and second.
I don't
right?
know. I like the first one for some reason. I mean, I like the second one a lot too. I think the action's superior in that movie, and the first movie's a mess. But there's something about it I think I like more. I can't quite put my finger on it. I'm going to have to go back and listen to our own episode to tell how I felt about it. But yeah, it might be a toss-up. I don't know. What's your ranking?
Oh, like I said, it's 2, 1, this one, which is part 6, right?
6, yeah.
Yeah, so 2, 1, 6, and then 3.
All right. That's coincidentally my pin number. So, I mean, what? What did I say? What?
Huh? I'm going to break into your house tonight.
Shit.